The planet of Virella was a place where danger hid in every shadow. Its red-brown soil stretched endlessly under a pale green sky, and jagged rocks rose like broken teeth from the ground. For centuries, humans and the Virellans, a proud alien species, had clashed in wars that seemed to have no end. Every human soldier knew that a single wrong step could mean death. But for Ethan, a young human warrior, danger was part of life and courage was his constant companion. Ethan crouched behind a rocky outcrop, his eyes scanning the horizon. His mission was simple on paper: patrol the outskirts of the recently abandoned Virellan stronghold and report any unusual activity. In reality, it was dangerous. Scouts had reported movement near the ruins, and no one knew if it was hostile or something worse. The wind blew dry dust across his face, but Ethan didn't flinch. He had been trained for this. Every muscle in his body was alert, every sense stretched to its limit. His fingers grazed the grip of his pulse rifle, ready to defend himself against whatever might appear. Then he saw it. A small figure crouched among the broken walls, shivering. It moved quickly, silently, and hid behind a toppled metal column. Ethan's eyes narrowed. It was a child, or at least that's what it looked like. Its skin was pale blue, and its eyes were large and dark, glimmering like liquid onyx. Long, thin limbs trembled as the child looked around nervously, unaware that someone was watching. Ethan felt a strange pull in his chest. He had seen enough suffering in his life to know that children should never be left alone in a battlefield. The Virellans were known for their fierce loyalty to their young, but this one seemed abandoned. He took a careful step forward, hands raised slightly to show he meant no harm. The child froze, eyes widening in terror. Ethan whispered softly, "I'm not going to hurt you." The child didn't respond. Instead, it hugged itself tighter, shivering. Ethan could see cuts on its arms and dirt smudging its face. Hunger and fear had left it weak. Ethan's instincts told him to call for help and complete his mission, but something deeper stirred inside him. He knew leaving the child alone meant certain death. The human heart often acted against logic, and in that moment it guided Ethan to make a choice. He stepped fully out from behind the rock, keeping his voice low and calm. "Come with me," he said. "You'll be safe." The child hesitated. Its small mouth opened as if to speak, but no sound came out. Its huge eyes studied Ethan carefully, searching for signs of danger. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, it moved closer. Ethan knelt to lower himself, putting his face at the child's level. "It's okay. You don't have to be afraid." Finally, the child took a trembling step forward. Ethan reached out gently, and it allowed him to hold its small hand. The touch was fragile, like holding a fragile flower. He felt a wave of protectiveness he could not explain. The first challenge was getting out of the area. Alien patrols could appear at any moment, and Ethan knew that if they saw him with the child, they would not hesitate. He scanned the terrain, spotting a narrow canyon that could provide cover. "Stay close to me," he whispered. The child nodded, clinging to him instinctively. The journey was slow and tense. Every step made his heart race. The child flinched at every sound, and Ethan had to pause often to calm it. He found small streams of water along the way and helped the child drink. They ate some emergency rations he carried. Slowly, the child began to relax, trusting Ethan in a way it could not with anyone else. During a brief rest, Ethan studied the child. Its features were delicate, almost human in some ways, yet unmistakably alien. Its skin had a faint luminescent glow under the pale sunlight, and faint markings ran along its arms and neck. He wondered about its family. Who would leave a child alone in such a dangerous place? Was it an accident or something more sinister? Suddenly, movement caught Ethan's eye. A shadow passed over the canyon walls. His pulse quickened. He motioned for the child to hide behind him. Peering around a rock, he spotted a group of Virellan soldiers, tall and armored, moving with precise coordination. Ethan's mind raced. They were looking for someone or something, and he realized with a sudden chill that it must be the child. If they found it alone, it would be taken or worse. He whispered urgently to the child, "We have to move now." The child's small hand tightened around his. Together they ran, weaving through rocks and dodging patrols. Ethan's knowledge of terrain, strategy, and human instincts kept them one step ahead. They climbed cliffs, crawled through narrow tunnels, and crossed shallow streams, all while avoiding detection. Hours passed like minutes. The child, despite exhaustion, stayed with him. Ethan talked softly, telling stories about Earth, about hope, about courage. The child listened, its large eyes absorbing every word, perhaps understanding more than it could speak. As night fell, they found shelter in the ruins of an old building. The walls were cracked and the roof had caved in, but it offered concealment. Ethan made a small fire, careful that the smoke wouldn't be seen from afar. He shared some of his rations and the child ate slowly, staring at him with a mixture of fear and trust. Ethan wondered about the consequences. Human command would not be pleased if they knew he had taken a Virellan child. Yet he could not bring himself to leave it. Morality and instinct were stronger than orders. He kept watch through the night, guarding the child with every ounce of energy he had. Each distant sound made him tense, ready to act. He realized that the bond between them was already forming. In the middle of war, humans had a unique strength, compassion. The child, though an alien, responded to that strength in ways that nothing else could. Before dawn, Ethan saw movement on a ridge far away. Figures, tall and commanding, moved swiftly. He recognized them as elite Virellan trackers. They had come for the child. Fear struck him, but he did not panic. He knew humans had survived impossible odds before, and he would do so again. He whispered to the child, "Listen to me. You must stay quiet. I'll keep you safe." The child nodded, and together they prepared to move again. As the first rays of Virella's sun touched the canyon, Ethan knew the journey ahead would be harder. The child's mother, likely someone important, would soon be searching, and humans and aliens alike might see him as a threat. Yet he did not hesitate. His duty, his courage, and his humanity compelled him forward. By the end of the first day, Ethan had protected the child from multiple threats and had begun to understand its intelligence and resilience. The child had survived because of him, and Ethan felt a quiet pride. He also realized one thing clearly. This was no ordinary child. Protecting it could change everything, for him, for the war, and for the future of human-alien relations. And deep within the shadows, someone watched. Queen Lyra, ruler of the Virellans and mother to the child, had sensed her child's presence. Anger, fear, and curiosity burned in her heart. She did not yet understand this human who had dared to take her child, but she would soon. For now, Ethan and the child rested, unaware that their fates were intertwined with the destiny of two species. The first spark of an extraordinary story had begun. The first light of dawn painted the jagged cliffs of Virella in shades of gold and green. Ethan had barely slept. The child rested quietly beside him, exhausted from the previous day's ordeal, but Ethan's mind was restless. Every shadow, every movement in the distance felt like a potential threat. The Virellans were relentless, and their elite trackers would not stop until they recovered their young one. Ethan carefully packed their meager supplies. The child stirred, blinking sleepily at the rising sun. "We have to move," Ethan whispered. "We can't stay here." The child clutched his hand, trust shining in its large eyes. Ethan felt a wave of responsibility heavier than any weapon he had ever carried. He was not just a soldier now. He was a protector, the last defense between this child and certain danger. The canyon stretched ahead, winding like a serpent through the rocky terrain. Ethan moved cautiously, using natural cover to avoid being seen. The child followed silently, stepping carefully over loose stones and jagged rocks. Ethan realized that survival in these lands required more than brute strength. It demanded cleverness, observation, and patience. Hours passed as they navigated narrow cliffs and shallow valleys. Every sound, a rustle of leaves, the distant cry of a Virellan bird, made Ethan pause. He whispered instructions to the child, teaching it to stay quiet, to hide when necessary, and to trust its instincts. In return, the child began showing signs of intelligence and cunning. It pointed out hidden paths and even small dangers like unstable rocks or deep crevices. By midday, Ethan spotted signs that the Virellans were close. Broken branches and faint footprints led in their direction. "They're near," he muttered, urgency tightening his chest. "We need to move faster but carefully." He led the child into a shallow ravine where the walls of stone would conceal them from view. They paused to rest briefly. Ethan gave the child water from his flask, careful to ration it. "You're stronger than you look," he said. "We can make it." The child looked at him as if understanding the words, then nodded silently. Suddenly, a loud noise echoed through the canyon, A Virellan patrol. Ethan pressed the child against the wall of rock, holding his breath. The patrol moved with perfect coordination, scanning the terrain with sharp eyes. Ethan knew their technology gave them an advantage. Sensors that could detect heat, sound, and even the faintest motion. Thinking quickly, Ethan found a narrow tunnel partially hidden by rocks. He whispered, "This way." The child followed, and they slipped inside just as the patrol passed. The tunnel was dark and uneven, but it offered safety. As they moved through it, Ethan marveled at the child's bravery. Despite fear, it stayed close and moved quietly, following his lead. Hours later, they emerged into a vast plain, stretching endlessly under the pale green sky. Ethan looked around, realizing that they had reached the outskirts of a forest, an area humans rarely explored because of rumors of deadly predators. But he saw opportunity. The forest offered cover and ways to hide from the Virellans. "Stay close," Ethan said, moving into the shadows of the trees. The child ran lightly beside him, eyes wide with wonder at the strange plants and glowing fungi that lined the forest floor. Ethan's mind worked quickly, plotting the safest path through the dense undergrowth. He knew the Virellans would search systematically, relying on their trackers and sensors. But humans had something aliens could not predict: unpredictability. Night fell quickly in the forest, and Ethan and the child made a small shelter using branches and leaves. He kept watch, listening for any movement. The child, exhausted, fell asleep quickly. Ethan remained alert, thinking about what lay ahead. Every step, every decision could mean life or death. By the second day, Ethan had noticed signs of the Virellan queen herself searching nearby. He recognized the child's insignia on a distant banner, marking the presence of royal trackers. He realized this mission was no longer simple survival. It was now entwined with politics, power, and life-or-death consequences. They moved quickly, Ethan using every trick he knew. He created decoys to mislead trackers, made false trails, and hid their heat signatures as best as he could. The child proved invaluable, pointing out hidden paths, noticing small dangers, and even warning him of approaching patrols with subtle gestures. The bond between them grew stronger with each step. Midway through the day, they encountered a dangerous river. The current was fast and the rocks were slippery. Ethan carried the child across carefully, testing every step before moving. The child held tightly to him, trusting him completely. On the other side, Ethan felt a sense of relief, but also a growing realization: protecting the child was changing him. He felt pride, responsibility, and a sense of purpose beyond the battlefield. In the evening, as they rested near a small grove, Ethan spoke softly. "You know," he said, "humans and aliens don't always have to fight. We can choose to help each other. I'm going to keep you safe no matter what." The child stared at him silently, then leaned against his shoulder. Ethan smiled faintly, feeling the warmth of connection that transcended species, culture, and war. But safety was fleeting. As they slept, distant sounds of movement alerted Ethan. Virellan patrols had discovered their trail. He grabbed the child, moving silently through the trees, careful not to make a sound. The patrols were thorough, their sensors sharp, but humans had the ability to think creatively in ways the aliens could not predict. Ethan led the child through narrow passages, using the forest's dense canopy as cover, and eventually lost the pursuers in a thick fog that rolled through the valleys. By dawn of the third day, they reached an abandoned alien outpost. It was partially destroyed in earlier battles, but it offered walls, shelter, and supplies left behind. Ethan secured the area and allowed the child to rest. He scouted the perimeter, noting that no patrols had discovered them yet. He realized they had a brief window of safety, a time to regroup and plan the next move. During this respite, Ethan and the child shared quiet moments. He taught it to recognize plants that could be used for food, to listen to the wind for danger, and to move silently through rough terrain. The child in turn taught Ethan small gestures and signals that belonged to its people, showing intelligence and resourcefulness beyond its years. Ethan began to see the child not as a mere charge, but as an equal partner in survival. Yet the danger was never far away. Ethan knew the queen would soon arrive, bringing her full power. The child's safety depended on his wits, courage, and resilience. He also understood something more profound. Humans had a strength the aliens could not measure. It was not just weapons or technology. It was ingenuity, compassion, and the ability to act selflessly even when the odds were against them. By the fourth day, Ethan and the child were ready to continue their journey. They had learned to move as one, anticipate dangers, and trust each other implicitly. The bond they shared had grown into something stronger than fear. It was mutual respect, reliance, and a quiet understanding that neither could survive alone. Ethan led them into a narrow canyon, a place he had noticed from a distance where alien patrols rarely ventured. Here he could plan their next move carefully. He glanced at the child, smiling faintly. "Almost there," he whispered. "We'll keep going. We won't let anyone take you." The journey ahead would be perilous. Enemy forces were near, and the Queen herself was searching relentlessly. But Ethan felt something he had never felt before: hope. He knew that humans could endure the impossible, and that courage, cleverness, and heart could defy even the most powerful enemies. As they moved deeper into the canyon, the child held his hand tightly, trusting him completely. Ethan knew that their lives were entwined now, and that protecting the child was not just an act of duty, it was a test of humanity itself. And far above, watching silently from a cliff, Queen Lyra's eyes burned with a mixture of anger and curiosity. She had never seen a human act with such fearless compassion, nor had she expected that someone could protect her child in the face of her entire army. Her interest was piqued, and a plan began forming in her mind. For Ethan, the journey was far from over. Every step forward would test his courage, his ingenuity, and his humanity. But one thing was certain: he would not abandon the child no matter what. For humans had a strength that even the fiercest aliens could not anticipate, a strength born of heart, courage, and cleverness. And so, the chase across worlds had truly begun. The alien forest stretched endlessly before Ethan, dense with towering trees that glowed faintly under Varella's pale green sky. Strange plants with translucent leaves rustled softly in the wind, and unseen creatures whispered in the shadows. For most humans, this place would be terrifying, but for Ethan it was a battlefield he knew how to navigate. The child, small and fragile, clung to his hand as they moved carefully through the undergrowth. Every step was measured. Every sound was noted. Ethan had learned to trust his instincts, and now he was learning to trust the child's too. The little one pointed out paths hidden by thick ferns, warned him of unstable ground, and even indicated where small water sources could be found. Together they were forming a partnership built on trust and survival. As night fell, Ethan made a small shelter beneath the roots of an enormous tree. The child curled up against him, shivering from exhaustion and cold. Ethan wrapped a light cloak around both of them, careful to protect the child while keeping his own body alert. He kept watch through the night, listening to every rustle, every distant cry. For hours, silence hung heavy in the air. Then faint footsteps approached. Ethan froze. The child, sensing danger, pressed against him. Ethan whispered, "Stay calm. Hide your face. Trust me." From the shadows, two Virellan scouts emerged, their armor glinting faintly in the moonlight. They moved cautiously, scanning the ground, their sensors searching for heat signatures. Ethan's heart beat steadily, though his mind raced. He knew they could not allow the scouts to find them. He scanned the surroundings and spotted a narrow tunnel hidden beneath the roots of a fallen tree. "This way," he whispered. The child followed instantly, crawling silently beside him. They slipped into the tunnel just as the scouts passed by, unaware that the humans had vanished. Inside the dark passage, Ethan paused to catch his breath. The child stared at him, eyes wide and glowing faintly in the dim light. Ethan smiled softly. "You're smart. You're brave. And you're helping me more than you know." The child's large eyes reflected trust and understanding. It reached out a small hand to touch his cheek, a gesture of affection and gratitude. Ethan felt a warmth spread through him that he could not explain. Protecting the child was no longer just about duty or strategy. It had become something deeper, something human. By the third day, Ethan realized that their journey was changing both of them. The child was learning human ways, adapting to stealth, learning to anticipate danger. Ethan was learning patience, empathy, and understanding from the child. In the midst of war, amidst fear and uncertainty, they had found something that transcended species: mutual trust. During a brief rest, near a crystal-clear stream, Ethan knelt beside the child. "We need to think ahead," he said softly. "The Queen will come looking for you soon. And when she does, she will bring her full power. The child's eyes widened, fear flickering across its face. Ethan continued, "But we can survive. You have courage, and I have experience. Together we can face anything." The child nodded, though it did not speak. Ethan had learned that even without words, this alien child could communicate volumes. Its gestures, its expressions, and its quiet bravery told him more than words ever could. As they continued their journey, the forest grew darker and more dangerous. Strange predators lurked in the shadows, some small but quick, others massive and powerful. Ethan had to use all his skill to protect the child. He set traps, created diversions, and taught the child how to stay silent and hidden. Every day was a test, and every day their bond grew stronger. On the fourth day, Ethan sensed movement above the treetops. He paused, eyes narrowing. The child stiffened beside him. From the shadows, a figure watched, tall, regal, and unmistakably alien. It was Queen Lyra, the mother of the child. Her presence was commanding even from a distance. She moved with the grace of someone used to authority, her eyes sharp and calculating. She did not attack. Instead, she observed. Ethan felt a mixture of fear and curiosity. He knew that when Lyra discovered him, the situation would become far more dangerous. But he also understood that she was intelligent, capable of recognizing bravery and honesty. Perhaps she could see what he had seen in the child: potential, courage, and the possibility of connection. As night fell, Ethan and the child camped near a hidden waterfall. The sound of rushing water masked their presence, giving them a rare moment of safety. Ethan taught the child how to make small fires without producing smoke, how to purify water, and how to move silently through rough terrain. The child absorbed every lesson, its intelligence and adaptability shining through. During these quiet hours, Ethan spoke softly about humans, about hope, about courage. "Humans fight," he said, "but we also care. We protect each other even when it is dangerous. That is our strength. And now I am protecting you." The child listened intently, its small hand brushing his arm in silent agreement. The next morning, the forest trembled with distant movement. Ethan knew Lyra was closer now. He felt a twinge of anxiety, but also determination. He would not abandon the child, no matter the cost. Using clever routes through the dense forest, he led the child over cliffs, through narrow paths and across streams. The child began to anticipate danger, signaling when they should hide or move silently. Their teamwork was flawless, a blend of human ingenuity and alien intuition. By the sixth day, Ethan realized they had reached the edge of a high plateau. From here, they could see the valley below, a wide expanse where alien patrols were numerous. He whispered to the child, "We need a plan. They are watching. We cannot rush blindly." The child pointed to a series of rock formations that offered cover. Ethan nodded, impressed by its insight. Together, they devised a path that minimized exposure, using shadows and terrain to their advantage. As they descended into the valley, Lyra appeared again, this time closer. Her eyes were fixed on Ethan, observing every movement. Ethan knew that a direct confrontation would come soon. He did not fear her. Humans had a history of surviving impossible odds, and he trusted in his courage, resourcefulness, and the bond he had built with the child. The child glanced at him, eyes filled with trust. Ethan felt a surge of determination. "We will face her together," he whispered, "and we will survive." Hours later, they found temporary refuge in an abandoned alien outpost. The walls were cracked and the roof had fallen in, but it offered concealment. Ethan allowed the child to rest while he kept watch from a high vantage point. From here, he could see Lyra's forces moving cautiously through the forest, searching for signs of her child. Ethan realized that Lyra was not just a queen, she was a strategist, a mother, and a warrior. Her presence was intimidating, but it also revealed something remarkable. She was studying him, analyzing his actions, and perhaps beginning to understand his motives. She had never encountered a human who acted with such courage, intelligence, and compassion. That night, as the stars shimmered above the alien forest, Ethan reflected on the journey so far. They had evaded patrols, survived predators, and formed a bond that transcended species. The child had become more than someone to protect. It was a partner, a teacher, and a reminder of the humanity that could survive even in the darkest places. And somewhere beyond the shadows, Lyra watched. Her heart, both royal and maternal, wrestled with conflicting emotions. She had expected anger, fear, or despair in response to Ethan's intrusion. Instead, she saw bravery, cleverness, and an unyielding will to protect the innocent. She did not yet know how she would confront him, but she understood one thing clearly. This human was extraordinary. As Ethan sat beside the child, preparing for the night, he whispered softly, "Tomorrow we keep moving. No matter what comes, we stay together." The child nodded, leaning against him, a silent promise of trust and loyalty. In the forest of Virella, a bond beyond war had formed. Ethan and the child had survived together, outsmarted enemies, and proven that courage, intelligence, and compassion could overcome even the most dangerous circumstances. And as the first light of dawn touched the canopy, Ethan knew that the next challenge would be the most difficult yet, facing Queen Lyra herself. But for now, they rested. They had survived another day, and in the quiet, human and alien hearts had begun to understand each other in a way that war could never destroy. The morning sun spilled pale green light across the jagged forest of Virella. Ethan moved quietly through the undergrowth, the child clinging to his hand. They had traveled for days, evading patrols and hiding in shadows. Yet now something felt different. The air seemed heavier, charged with anticipation. He could sense it even before he saw her. Ahead, on a raised platform of rock and vines, stood a figure tall and imposing. Queen Lyra, the mother of the child, radiated power and authority. Her skin glimmered faintly in the sunlight, and her dark eyes were sharp and calculating. Around her, a small group of elite soldiers stood silently, weapons ready, watching Ethan and the child as carefully as their queen did. Ethan stopped, raising his free hand slightly. "I don't want to fight," he said calmly, his voice carrying just enough to be heard without alarming the soldiers. The child's grip on his hand tightened, but it stayed silent. Queen Lyra's gaze swept over them both, assessing. "You are the human who took my child," she said, her voice low but commanding. "Why have you brought this one here? Do you know what you have done?" Ethan kept his stance relaxed but alert. "I did not take your child. I found it alone, afraid, and I could not leave it to die. That is all." His words were honest, steady, and carefully chosen. Lyra's eyes narrowed. She had expected fear, perhaps bargaining, maybe even lies. Instead, she saw a human standing confidently, speaking with clarity and truth. "You risked your life against my soldiers," she said. "For a child of my blood, why?" Ethan met her gaze without hesitation. "Because protecting the innocent is worth the risk. Humans have a duty to protect even when danger is certain. I couldn't leave the child." For a long moment, silence hung between them. The forest around them seemed to hold its breath. Lyra's soldiers shifted uneasily. They had been trained to obey her orders, to capture the child at any cost. But the queen remained still, studying Ethan. She noticed the way he held himself, his calm focus, his unwavering attention to the child. Unlike most beings she had encountered, he did not appear motivated by greed, ambition, or fear. He acted purely out of duty and courage. "You are unusual," Lyra said finally. "Most humans would run, hide, or fight without care for consequences. You risk yourself, and yet you do not ask for reward. Why?" Ethan glanced at the child, who looked back at him with wide, trusting eyes. "I am not here for reward," he said softly. "I am here because it is right. Because someone has to care." Lyra took a slow step forward. The soldiers tensed, but she did not signal them to attack. She moved closer to Ethan, studying every detail of his posture, his expression, his eyes. He did not flinch. He did not draw a weapon. His humanity, the courage, compassion, and cleverness he displayed, was undeniable. "Most would call this madness," she murmured almost to herself. "Yet there is strength in it." Ethan nodded slightly. "Strength comes in many forms. I protect the child because it matters, because doing nothing is worse than risking everything." For the first time, Lyra's expression softened. The hard lines of command and duty faded as she considered his words. She thought of her child, alone, frightened, and now safe because of this human. She felt a strange mixture of admiration, curiosity, and caution. Could she trust him? Could she allow her child to remain with him? Before she could decide, a small alert sounded from the soldiers' devices. A patrol had been spotted approaching from the valley below. Ethan and Lyra both noticed, tension snapping back into the air. "You see," Ethan said, his eyes narrowing slightly. Even now, danger comes, but we can survive it. Together if we choose to. Lyra paused, considering. The situation was clear. Ethan had protected her child through impossible odds. He had evaded patrols, outsmarted trackers, and kept the child safe. His actions had proven something extraordinary. Humans had a courage and cleverness that even the most skilled aliens could not anticipate. "You understand, my child," she said finally. "You do not fear, you do not exploit, you only protect." "Why?" Ethan met her gaze calmly. "Because someone must. Humans have survived for centuries by protecting each other, by acting when others cannot. I see the same potential in your child. The ability to survive, to learn, to grow. I will not abandon it." Lyra's eyes softened further. She saw the truth in his words, the strength in his resolve. "You are not like the others," she admitted. "Most humans are reckless, impulsive, or cowardly. You are different. Perhaps this is why you have survived this long." Ethan glanced at the approaching patrol. "We can move quickly, avoid them, and keep the child safe. But only if we trust each other." Lyra studied him for several moments, then made a surprising decision. She raised her hand, signaling her soldiers to stand down. "You may continue to protect the child," she said, her voice firm yet measured. "But you will remain under my observation. I will not risk another mistake." Ethan bowed slightly, understanding the gravity of her words. "I accept," he said. "I will protect the child no matter the cost." The child looked up at Ethan, sensing the relief and trust in his tone. It reached out and touched his arm gently, a silent expression of gratitude and connection. Ethan smiled softly, feeling the bond between them strengthen. Lyra stepped closer to Ethan, her gaze steady. "I will watch your actions," she said. "And if you prove worthy, perhaps we can build understanding between our species. But make no mistake, this is your only chance." Ethan nodded. "I understand." The patrol from the valley moved closer, but Ethan, guided by his knowledge of the terrain, led Lyra and her child along hidden paths, using shadows, trees, and rocks for cover. He taught the child to anticipate danger, to hide, and to signal silently when a threat approached. Lyra watched quietly, noticing how the child responded, how Ethan used patience, cleverness, and calm to navigate peril. By nightfall, they had reached a hidden valley, isolated and protected by steep cliffs. Ethan made a small camp, using the natural terrain for defense. He gave the child water and rations, and then he and Lyra spoke quietly. "You have done well," Lyra said. "I did not expect a human to act with such integrity. You protect without hesitation, without reward, without fear. It is remarkable." Ethan looked at her calmly. "It is what humans do when necessary. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is the choice to act despite it. And compassion is not weakness, it is strength." Lyra studied him, her expression unreadable. For the first time, she considered that humans might be more than her species had believed. Perhaps they could be allies, not enemies. Perhaps the child had chosen wisely in being protected by him. The child slept quietly beside Ethan, unaware of the weight of the moment. But its safety, its trust, and its future now rested in the hands of both Ethan and Lyra. As the night deepened, the stars glittered faintly above the alien forest. Ethan kept watch, alert to any danger. Lyra remained nearby, observing, learning, and perhaps reconsidering everything she had assumed about humans. By the end of the night, a fragile understanding had formed. Ethan had proven his courage, his cleverness, and his unwavering commitment. Lyra had seen something extraordinary, a human who acted with honor and heart, not just skill. And the child, the innocent center of this conflict, slept safely between the two, a symbol of hope in a world divided by war. Ethan knew that the next challenge would be even greater. The Queen had not yet fully decided whether to trust him completely, and danger remained ever present. But for the first time, he sensed that human courage and compassion could bridge the gap between species. That understanding, he realized, might change the course of the war itself. And somewhere deep in the forest, beyond the campfire's light, Virulon patrols waited, unaware that the bond forming between Ethan, the child, and the Queen might turn the tide of fate in ways no one had imagined. Ethan glanced at the child, who stirred slightly in its sleep. "We will face everything together," he whispered softly. "No one will take you from me. Not now, not ever." And in that moment, beneath the pale green sky of Virella, courage, trust, and humanity had begun to shine brighter than any weapon. The pale green light of dawn stretched across Virella's forest, casting long shadows between towering trees. Ethan and the child moved carefully, now accompanied by Queen Lyra. Her presence was imposing, yet there was a sense of quiet respect in her demeanor. Ethan knew that earning her trust had been difficult, but their journey had created a fragile understanding, a bond built on courage, compassion, and honor. The patrols were still searching, but Ethan's knowledge of the terrain gave them an advantage. He led them along hidden paths, across streams, and through dense foliage. The child, more confident now, pointed out dangers, hid behind rocks, and followed his instructions flawlessly. Together, the three moved like a well-coordinated team, humans and alien learning to anticipate each other's movements. Suddenly, a distant alarm echoed through the forest. Virellan patrols had discovered their general location. Ethan glanced at Lyra, whose expression remained calm yet alert. "We need to act quickly," he said. "They will come from all sides." Lyra nodded. "I will help you, but you must lead." "Show me how you intend to protect the child," Ethan thought fast. "We'll split into two paths to confuse them. The patrols will follow the larger movements, while we take the hidden trail through the northern cliffs. From there we can escape into the mountains. It will be dangerous, but it's our best chance." The Queen studied him carefully, then gave a small nod. "I trust your judgment. Let us proceed." They moved silently, the child nestled between Ethan and Lyra. The forest seemed alive with anticipation. Every rustle, every faint sound made Ethan tense, yet he felt an extraordinary sense of determination. He had kept the child safe through countless dangers, and he would not fail now. The patrols appeared sooner than expected, blocking several obvious paths. Ethan led the group to a narrow ravine, hidden by rocks and foliage. Using the shadows, they slipped past unnoticed. The child held Ethan's hand tightly, trusting completely. Lyra observed with quiet admiration as Ethan's knowledge, ingenuity, and calm under pressure allowed them to evade detection. By midday, they reached a high plateau overlooking the valley, where the majority of Virellan patrols were gathered. Ethan paused to catch his breath, scanning the landscape. "We have a chance to escape," he whispered, "but we must move quickly before they realize where we went." The child nodded silently. Its small hand squeezed his, a gesture of trust that Ethan felt deep in his chest. Protecting this child had become more than a mission. It was a purpose, a responsibility that carried the weight of life itself. Lyra stepped beside Ethan. "You have proven your strength and your courage," she said quietly. "Not all humans would act as you have. You have earned my respect." Ethan looked at her steadily. "I did not act for respect. I acted because it was right. Because protecting the innocent is more important than fear, more important than orders." Lyra considered his words carefully. She was a queen, a warrior, and a mother. She understood the value of strength, intelligence, and strategy. But she also saw something else in Ethan, a rare quality that even the fiercest Virellans might lack: compassion, honor, courage that transcended survival or conquest. The distant patrols began closing in, their movements swift and coordinated. Ethan led them down a series of hidden passes through the cliffs. The child followed closely, trusting every instruction. Lyra stayed alert, using her own skills to anticipate danger, silently acknowledging Ethan's leadership. As they descended, Ethan noticed a narrow crevice leading to a hidden cave system. "This is our chance," he whispered. "Once inside, they cannot follow easily. We can rest, plan, and continue safely." The child's eyes brightened slightly at the promise of safety. Ethan led them through the tight crevice, the rocks pressing closely on both sides. Lyra followed, her gaze fixed on Ethan as she moved silently. The patrols searched above, unaware of the hidden route. Inside the cave, they paused. Ethan allowed the child to rest and drink water. Lyra examined the surroundings, ensuring no danger lingered inside. The cave offered temporary refuge, but Ethan knew they could not stay long. Patrols would adapt, and the Queen needed to make a decision about her child's future. Lyra spoke softly, addressing Ethan directly. "You have protected my child against impossible odds. You have outsmarted and survived when most humans would have failed. Why do you do this? Why risk everything for one life?" Ethan looked at the child, then back at the Queen. "Because one life matters. Because protecting the innocent defines who we are. Humans survive not just by strength, but by courage, compassion, and action when others cannot." I could not abandon your child. It was not a choice, it was duty. And duty comes from the heart. Lyra studied him silently, her eyes softening. She thought of her child alone and vulnerable, now safe because of a human's courage. For the first time she considered that not all humans were enemies. Perhaps there was potential for understanding, even alliance, if humans could act with such honor. Suddenly, distant shouts echoed from the valley. The patrols had discovered their general location and were approaching quickly. Ethan knew that time was running out. "We must move," he said. "Follow me and stay close." Using hidden passages in the cave system, they descended further, eventually reaching a concealed valley. The patrols above searched frantically but could not locate them. Ethan led them to a natural bridge spanning a deep chasm, where careful movement allowed them to cross undetected. The child's small hand gripped his tightly. Ethan smiled faintly, feeling the trust and bond they had built over days of danger. Lyra followed closely, observing his skill and calm. She had expected recklessness, fear, and perhaps failure. Instead, she had witnessed a human whose courage, intelligence, and heart could match the best of the Virulans. At last, they reached a safe plateau on the other side of the chasm. The patrols were still searching below, unable to follow. Ethan allowed himself a brief moment of relief. The child looked at him with wide, grateful eyes. He knelt beside it, placing a protective hand on its shoulder. "You are safe now," he whispered. "No one will take you from us." Lyra approached, her expression unreadable. Then slowly she nodded. "You have done the impossible," she said. "You have protected my child, outsmarted my patrols, and proven your courage and honor. I misjudged humans. Perhaps we can build trust, understanding, and a future without endless war." Ethan looked at her calmly. "It begins with protecting the innocent, one life at a time." Lyra's gaze softened as she stepped closer to her child. She knelt, embracing the small figure gently. The child looked between Ethan and Lyra, a symbol of hope, trust, and the possibility of connection across species. "You have earned my respect," Lyra said to Ethan. "And more than that, you have shown what humanity can be at its best. From this day forward, we will remember your courage and perhaps begin a new path together." Ethan nodded, understanding the weight of her words. The war that had raged between humans and Virulans might not end overnight, but one bond, one act of courage, had planted a seed of change. Humanity's strength, its courage, intelligence, and compassion had been proven. The child, resting safely between Ethan and Lyra, smiled faintly. It had survived impossible odds, not just because of skill, but because of trust, courage, and the human heart. As the sun set over Varela, painting the sky in shades of green and gold, Ethan felt a quiet pride. He had protected the innocent, outsmarted danger, and earned the respect of a queen. But more importantly, he had proven that courage, compassion, and intelligence could change even the harshest world. Lyra stood beside him, looking over the valley below. "Perhaps," she said softly, "this is the beginning of a new understanding between our species. One human has shown what is possible when honor and heart guide action." Ethan smiled faintly, glancing at the child. "One life can change everything," he said, and in the quiet of the forest beneath the pale green sky, a new chapter began. The human warrior had protected the enemy's child. The alien queen had recognized his courage, and together they had proven that humanity, brave, clever, and compassionate, could shine even in the darkest places. The journey was far from over. Challenges would come, dangers would rise, and choices would test their courage. But for now, trust, honor, and bravery had won, and the bond between Ethan, the child, and Queen Lyra would shape the future of two worlds.